Hello, everybody. We are here for some Week 5 salary exploitation after a action-packed Week 4 with a lot of great plays on the main slate. We're sort of heading into a week where Saints Falcons on bye, Patriots Bucks probably the best game of the week, not on the main slate. So now first. What do you think about week 4 real quick, Jason? And then we can get into, what you think about week 5.
Week 4 was fun. I told you it was just a lot of fun. Big scores from running backs this week. Wide receivers and passing games. Wide receivers more of a downfall this week, but we had like Watson and Dalton and all those guys kind of go off, and it was like I sat there with some Brady shares, and I was like, I had plenty of Watson, but I was just kind of like, maybe I should have just went more all in on cheap quarterbacks because they were in good spots this week. But it was fun.
Yeah, it was definitely fun. Getting into this week, before we get into the salary exploitation and potentially the value plays of the week, what is your strategy for paying up this week? I've kind of checked it out. And last week, I kind of knew where I was going pretty early on. I knew I wanted to pay up at running back and maybe wanted to fade the top receivers a little bit. This week, a little uglier. We got Le'Veon Bell, but what's your basic strategy for quarterback, wide receiver, running back here?
I think the mid-range quarterback and is kind of going to be key because, like, when you look, like, Rodgers is such a huge difference from everyone else. He's $1,000 more on DraftKings than the next quarterback, which is Russell Wilson. He's $1,500 more. I kind of look like Roethlisberger against this Jacksonville pass defense. I don't really feel like going. Like, there's kind of a lot of weird mid-range plays I just don't feel like going with. So I think it's going to be a pay down week at quarterback, and I think I'm going to be kind of focusing in on Bell and then trying to find a nice mid-range play because I don't think that some of these guys are necessarily locks in terms of like guys like Kareem Hunt or Elliott or McCoy. Gurley's interesting, I think, still. So there's no bang play this week where I'll just like click them in 100% exposure, maybe outside of Bell.
Would you consider OBJ? So obviously been getting targeted extremely heavily, looking pretty good. Got banged up last week. That ankle injury re-injured his finger. How are you dealing with him this week? Are you getting a lot of exposure? Or are you just more like, all right, Bell's the expensive play I want to go with?
Yeah, I think it's him because, really, Chargers have been pretty decent, like holding wide receiver ones down. I know they're banged up in terms of the secondary. I think he's always a guy to have some exposure to. I didn't have as much as I wanted to against Philly. I was kind of off of him, but I kind of like Jordy this week. I think he's my guy that I kind of take a look at in terms of a high price option because, AJ Green, I'm not in love with the matchup. Des Bryant on DraftKings is actually a really nice price.
Definitely. And hey, after 4 weeks, after everyone hating him, guess who's QB9 in fantasy? Eli Manning. And you know what? I like Sterling Shepard as a third or fourth option. I like Evan Ingram as that third or fourth option. I love OBJ as that number one option. And, I wouldn't consider Brandon Marshall the number 2 option, but they kind of have 3 number 3s. And that's a lot of nice weapons. So I think we have to take that into account going forward. Jumping into the value quarterbacks, first one you wrote up, Dak Prescott, pretty cheap across the sites going against Green Bay. Only 30 on Yahoo, which quarterback has kind of been, they've treated us well on Yahoo so far this year. But 68 on DK, 77 on FanDuel, also nice prices. What are you looking at in this matchup?
It's a good spot, and we've had 2 games against Green Bay last year for Prescott. He's had a couple of tough matchups. 17 fantasy points on the road against Denver. That's a tough spot for him. And he did somewhat well. A lot of that was kind of garbage time. 17 points against New York. DraftKings, he's the 3rd most expensive quarterback, but I think he's kind of deservingly owned that price tag for what he's put up. But at Lambeau here, 3 touchdowns, 247 last year in the regular season, 302 and 3 touchdowns. Green Bay's secondary, one of their weaker spots. Prescott's kind of developed into a nice a nice fantasy quarterback. And I think I've kind of taken it for granted the first couple of weeks here, just kind of with other guys in some better spots. But I think this Green Bay Cowboys game, I mean, I think it really does have potential for a shootout. And 6,800 on DK, that's kind of expensive. But I mean, on FanDuel, 6-month expensive. He's below 8K. I think 7,700 is a nice price, especially when you look at Stafford against Carolina at home. Carson Wentz is somewhat intriguing. Cam Newton. Can we talk Cam Newton all of a sudden, like, oh, I went from injured to all of a sudden looking like,
no. That's the Pats D. No, I'm still out. Yeah, it's the Pats D. I definitely like that point. If you play Dak, we've kind of seen them get a little more efficient with where they're going with the passing game. Are you auto stacking Dez Bryant with Dak if you're playing him, or can you go without, a main stack? It looks like Witten's kind of back towards that blocking role he was in the previous 2 years.
Well, did we anticipate Witten just continuously getting?
No. But it was something to kind of start to get worried about early in the year,
Well, I think that's the thing. It was like we saw Dez Bryant have a lot of bad one-on-one matchups early on in the season, and we saw kind of Witten take the bulk of those targets. We saw Cole Beasley a couple of times. I like what I've seen out of Zeke in the passing game. I'm not afraid to play Prescott or Zeke together in the lineup to be contrarian because I don't think people will do that. But I do like Dez. I think Dez is an interesting price tag on DraftKings. He's obviously priced up over on FanDuel where he's 78. But I mean, DraftKings, I mean, you go down here in price. I mean, he's next to Crabtree, Tate. He's, I believe, just outside the top 10 in terms of wide receiver pricing. So, 6,600, it's not a bad stack with Prescott this week, especially if you want to go, QB1, wide receiver 1, and then opposing wide receiver on the Green Bay side.
So you wrote Jacoby Brissett as your second guy here, really cheap across all the sites. Obviously, if you look at the box score, you just see Brissett was a turnover machine and got slammed. But first half of that game, he was playing well. He was driving. He just made some mistakes that really just shifted the game to an unreasonable pace. Against San Francisco, who I don't mind their defense, but I do think, Brissett is a guy you can play. Are you playing him with Hilton, or what's your plan here?
Yeah, I'll play him with Hilton. I think he's actually more of a solo play, I think, more than anything this week. I mean, I don't mind Hilton. He's probably the only viable Colts receiver that you can really use right now. Moncrief has never really had any upside. His upside's basically 40, 50 yards and a touchdown. He's never really doing anything more than that. But you look at Brissett, I mean, the rushing game is obviously something that adds to his floor and ceiling. I think he's a reasonable price. For me, I mean, Prescott's $700 more than Brissett on FanDuel. I still think I find the extra $700 to go out to Prescott, but I'm not knocking Brissett this week. I think it's a good spot back at home. Do you have any interest in taking some big-time shots on, like, Cutler or Hoyer this week?
Hoyer for sure. And, I mean, he's coming off, 3 games of his 4 to start under 10 points. So that's ugly. But I do think there's still potential there. That offense with Shanahan is still good. I'm more leaning towards Hyde than playing Hoyer, but yeah, I definitely think he's in play. I mean, Mitchell Trubisky just got the starting nod today for this week. He's an athletic rookie quarterback. And I think on Yahoo, he's the man. He's $20 for quarterbacks. So I think you really have to take a stern look at him. He's athletic, he can run the ball, and there's going to be this week, we're going to find out really quickly who his safety valve is. And I think, you look at Zach Miller, $12. I think that's a really interesting stack. It could be Kendall Wright. It could be Bellamy. It could be Deontay Thompson. We don't know who Trubisky was working with on the second team. Sometimes you see that second team guy kind of come up there, but yeah, something to at least pay attention to for research. Running back, pay up. But if you can't, you mentioned Wendell Smallwood and DeMarco Murray. Let's first talk about Murray, because my initial gut reaction was just to say, I hate you for putting this down. And I'm I'll say sheepish. I don't know if that's an actual verb, but I think that's how I feel about DeMarco Murray at this stage. Had that big run against Seattle. Other than that, he's done nothing all year. What's your take on this game?
So this game, I mean, basically a couple offenses that have just been horrendous, like over the last few. I mean, Tennessee was good against Seattle, but outside of that, I've just kind of looked subpar from what we were expecting this year. Murray's a guy. I mean, last year this was someone who we hedged quite a bit off of when people were using Bell, Zeke, those Johnson, and we kind of looked at Murray as the guy who was 1,000 cheaper. And he hasn't had a game yet where he's been over 15 rushing attempts. That's obviously concerning. Derrick Henry's, stolen some. They've been in some bad game scripts where they throw a little bit more. But I mean, he's been efficient with his touches. I mean, 5.1 yards per carry this season. He's caught 6 of 8 targets. Hasn't done much. If Mariota's out this week, Tennessee should be grinding and just basically running the ball 30 plus times. And I still think even if Mariota's healthy, that's the game that they need to do. Like, why are they wasting Henry and Murray? I don't even care if they split cut touches, but why are they trying to be this team? Like, I get they pulled in Decker, but they need to be running the ball 30 plus times a game. And I just think this is a week maybe they could get back to that. And Murray's price across the board, I mean, $19 on Yahoo, $6,400 on FanDuel, $54 on DK. Like, if we can get 80 yards and a touchdown to Murray and a couple of catches, I mean, I'm stoked at that as an RB2 price right there.
No, you're definitely right. It's a great play. I just I'm letting the first 4 weeks bias me a little bit, even though I shouldn't, because we know Murray's had that hamstring. Like you mentioned, though, that Mariota injury, the hamstring could certainly change their game plan, even if it wasn't already run heavy. So against this Dolphins team that struggled to score, could be a good game flow for a certain wide receiver that we're going to be looking at next. Wendell Smallwood, you mentioned against Arizona, pretty cheap across the way. Saw some nice little juice to this guy, second year running back out of West Virginia. So you like that play?
I do. I think it's an intriguing cheap end option. Like, his price hardly went up over the week. I mean, he's went up $600 on DraftKings. I don't even think it went up a full 1,000 on FanDuel. He was, I believe he was below 5.9 last week, but 79 yards, total yards between receiving. He caught 4 or 6 catches. He's going to take some of that work in the passing game that Sproles is going to give up, with his injury. The end zone is certainly still where Blunt should be getting most of the work. Blunt had that huge run, the 68-yard run that made up a majority of his yardage, but for the most part, I mean, I think Smallwood's a pretty intriguing play. I think Blunt's an intriguing play. I think they're going to both hover around 15, touches, 15, 18 touches a game. They need to get Corey Clement out of the picture. Like, he keeps stealing like 6 or 7 touches from both these guys, and I just want to stop. But I have some interest in both. I think this is a good spot against Arizona, who they've always been a team that does struggle defensively on the road. They struggle going east. The Arizona defense, in terms of the run defense, I just don't find it to be all that really thrilling. I think the Eagles are intriguing at home this week.
Definitely. Wide receiver. So I describe these two guys as more mid-range options, but based on what they could do, especially with some of, the injuries with Green Bay and what we're looking at for game script with Miami for the rest of the year, Randall Cobb and Devontae Parker really cheap across all 3 sites for what they can do. What are you looking at with those two?
Yeah, I mean, I think, DK. So I mentioned before the show, DK, they kind of made pricing a little bit tight as far as like the wide receivers and running backs go this week. So I don't think Cobb's a bad price at 6.7. I don't think Parker's a bad price at 6.6. They're also in kind of line with a lot of other people, which makes you jump towards like FanDuel. 66 for Cobb, that's a nice price. 61 for Parker, I really like. But when you look at things, I mean, Adams, I doubt he plays this week. I think Cobb's an intriguing option. You expected more out of him in the red zone this year anyway. Cobb's probably going to be a guy I play a lot of, especially on FanDuel this week. I just think the upside's really there in that passing game against Dallas, who has just basically been shredded by wide receivers this season. They just really haven't looked good.
Yeah, and you mentioned Adams. Also, we don't know if Ty Montgomery's going to play, which would be Cobb out of the backfield more, Cobb short passes. So yeah, I'm definitely with you on Cobb. I think he's sort of a cash game guy, if not a tournament guy. So he's going to see some ownership, but he's a great play. Last guy you mentioned, our good old pal Nelson Aguilar. Kind of chugging along here this season. On pace for 700 yards and a few touchdowns. Pretty good for a third-year guy who really we didn't have much expectation for before the year. Sort of looks like he's taken, Torrey Smith hasn't really been targeted much at all. He's been out there, but it seems like the targets kind of go to Aguilar, Ertz, or Alshon, you know?
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like Arizona, Patrick Peterson locks up wide receiver once and just never gets targeted. Like you'd expect him to shadow, Alshon Jeffrey this week, and I think that puts Nelson Aguilar and Zach Ertz both in an interesting position because I think some targets go their way. Aguilar, obviously, I think he had 7 or 8 targets week 1, and then 3, 3, and 4 since. But wide receiver 2s against Arizona this year, averaging 7.9 passing attempts per game. I think that's an intriguing number for Aguilar, who can kind of get maybe 6 or 7 targets this week.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the Philly offense is going to be kind of a fun one. It's going to fluctuate on a week-to-week basis as far as targets go, probably outside of Ertz, who just kind of continuously gets those points from Wentz. As far as like a GPP dart throw, I don't think you can go wrong here because we talked about paying up a running back. I think you might have to take a shot in GPPs to kind of get those, maybe that one extra guy that you want to pair with Bell. And I think Aguilar as a wide receiver 3 is not a bad look in this spot here.
Definitely like the price, that's for sure. Tight ends. So the party's not over on DK, but 4K for Evan Ingram against the Chargers, I don't love. However, FanDuel and Yahoo, party's on. $12 on Yahoo, $5,400 on FanDuel. I mean, that's a pretty easy play for a guy who's getting, 7 or 8 targets a game, had 11 last week. So this, Evan Ingram, they drafted him in the first round, really looking like a really solid future player. So the fact that he's already in this, I'll let you break it down, but looking like a pretty good matchup here.
Yeah, Chargers so far 31st in DVOA against tight ends. They allowed 5 for 81 against Ertz. They did contain Travis Kelce fairly well. I think they put more of a primary focus on him, and then things kind of went elsewhere because we saw Tyreek Hill, Kareem Hunt kind of carry a majority of that. But Ingram, 11 targets, 7-7 over the last 3 weeks. He kind of broke out against that Lions game. That was kind of the first showing where we saw him get in the end zone. He's seen as many targets as Gronkowski this year. I think that's one comparison that we like to see. He's tied for 3rd in receptions. He's still cheap. For me, I don't think 4K on DraftKings is all that bad. I know Ertz is kind of the easy plug-in option.
Yes.
Out of that range, like Charles Clay is going to be intriguing. Jordan Matthews just got ruled out for a month. Charles Clay continues to be the guy Tyrod goes for. I don't know what the hell's up with Jimmy Graham at this point. So when I look at all these guys in the range, you got, Witten, who we talked about kind of going off the trail. He's going to go back to what he used to be. Martellus Bennett might be an intriguing option this week. If Adams sits, I think he sees a few extra targets. But overall, it is not really a sexy tight end week.
Witten's in a really tough spot for his playing style because they're asking him to block a lot. And that probably throws him out of his receiving, game. And when he gets targets, it's like these random, Russell Wilson scrambles, 30 yards down the field. It's just a really weird role for a guy. I still think he's a tremendous talent. He made a great play down the sideline last night, but yeah, I agree. He's just not playable right now. ASJ, I would say had a positive first, game, sort of with what we were expecting. I think he kind of met expectations for that offense. Seems like he's going to be a guy going forward. Immense talent. That was never a question. So going to get a role every week. Why not play him, right?
Why not in this matchup too? Cleveland's given up huge games of Titans. Tyler Kroft, Jesse James both had multi-touchdown games against the Browns. Far less talent. Kroft's not bad, but far less talent than I think ASJ here. Cleveland's allowed 31, 286, and 4 touchdowns to tight ends this year. The only team that's worse is New York. And I wish Hunter Henry or Antonio Gaines just had a prominent role because you could plug in a tight end against the Giants, but they just eat into each other. Benjamin Watson, 8 catches for 91 yards against his team. I just think, ASJ here is in a good spot. $13 on Yahoo, $55 on FanDuel, $35 on DK. They're he hasn't done much. 4 for 46, 5 for 31 the first 2 weeks, but I think there's a little bit of buzz that's causing these sites to tick them up just a little bit, where we're not getting just basically punt ASJ for week 5. So it's a little bit pricey, but I think he's an intriguing option, especially in this matchup.
Definitely. And hey, 4 for 46 on DK probably didn't even kill you. last week
No.
with some of the other options, the Ebrons of the world. So, you know, pretty interesting role for him on a team that doesn't really have a stud receiving option. Defenses, I'll throw this out there quickly. Seahawks $11 on Yahoo against the Rams. Obviously, that could be a trap, but I think it's something to at least pay attention to. You wrote up the Raiders and the Eagles. What are you looking at for those?
Defense is kind of lackluster this week. You know, I don't like a lot of options. Steelers are obviously in play against Blake Bortles. I think especially if they're going to be running 30 times with Bell. Do you like anyone like
No.
above average? Like, are you just like, oh my God, I got to get this team? Like, I don't like anyone enough to really get crazy excited about this week, at least early.
It's really ugly. You look at some of the teams and you're just like, I don't trust you. I don't trust the offenses. I don't trust the defenses. I mean, when in doubt, go with, the home teams that are favored, but you're not getting discounts on those teams,
Yeah, and I mean, Oakland's intriguing. Like, you look at Baltimore, I mean, they've been bad. They're just straight up a bad offense. Joe Flacco, he's average at best. They're averaging 159 passing yards per game, averaging 15 points per game. They go all the way to Oakland this week. I know they played at home, but they played at England the week before. Like, this is just kind of a tough spot for this team. And Baltimore, I mean, bottom half of fantasy points, a lot of defense. I'm not saying Oakland's a good defense, but I think they're average at best and can take advantage of this spot. So, I mean, 2,900 on DK, if you want to go that route, I don't think it's that bad. 43 on FanDuel, $11 on Yahoo. Like, I'm probably going to be looking to get some savings at defense this week because I don't see one defense who's going to put up like a monster score that I need to pay up for.
Well, what about the Bills versus the Bengals? I'm a big fan of Andy Dalton and AJ Green going forward. Bills just shut down the Falcons. I mean, they just shut them down like it was nothing. I think that's a team you have to take seriously going forward. Rams defense at home against a team that's looked better the last 2 weeks. I don't love the Rams offense. I think Seahawks will score on them, but they have no running game now. They have no running game. So if Aaron Donald can get pressure, could be trouble. Rams always play the Seahawks really well. But other than that, I mean, I think you're kind of looking in the right direction here.
Yeah, it's basically taking a lot of shots with kind of cheaper deals. I like the Bills call this week. I think they've been solid. I mean, 11 sacks this year, 6 interceptions. They obviously had the touchdown last week. They have yet to allow over 20 points this season. I mean, the one thing that I've noticed with them, and I was talking with one of my friends who's a Bills fan, is they're disciplined. This isn't the Rex Ryan give up 40 yards on a drive from being just dumb on defense. And I like them here. And I think Philly's another one that's interesting back at home. Carson Palmer just continues to make horrendous throws every now and then, and they don't have a running game either. And I thought
like that was a weird game. And the fantasy people that kind of got bailed out by Carson Palmer. That was the worst. That was the worst 350 passing yard performance I've ever seen. Probably. Well, that's not true at all. But it's probably top 20. Top 20 bad 350 passing yard games. I mean, so it's not good. That offense is bad. They need David Johnson to make them run. I do think you can get a J.J. Nelson or John Brown or something like that. But like you mentioned, the pick six. That's pick six alert right there if I've ever seen it.
5 interceptions for Palmer. Right? like you said, like this dude, he's thrown for 300 yards in his last 3 games, but they're so inefficient in the red zone.
Oh, so bad.
It's just, I don't know. I don't know if it's even going to progress to anything remotely good for Palmer. I mean, it may, but I'm not going to put my odds on it.
So if last week was a 9 out of 10 in terms of fun, easy to pick plays, like things making sense, what is this week for you so far? Scale of 1 to 10. A 5?
It's going to be a brutal week, I think.
Not a high week. This is a tough week, guys. So stick with us. We have, the slate breakdown coming tomorrow. But a 5 out of 10, you said?
Yeah, that's being probably generous.
Yeah. It's going to be a tough week, guys. So be prepared, do your research, and, catch us later in the week. If you like this video, certainly give us a like and subscribe. And we'll catch you on the slate breakdown.